Welcome to your storytelling. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to subscribe. I had always known my husband was quiet, reserved, and a bit mysterious about his past, but I never thought it would come knocking on our door. That night, everything changed. A man in a sharp suit showed up unexpectedly, asking for him by name. His presence was unsettling, and the air was thick with tension. My heart raced, unsure of what was happening. The man stood at the threshold, eyes scanning the room as if looking for something more than just my husband. I could feel my pulse in my ears, a deep unease building up inside me. He didn't belong here, and the way he addressed my husband sent a chill down my spine. I had no idea what I was about to hear, but I knew it would alter everything. I didn't have time to think before my husband's expression changed. He was no longer the man I married. This was someone else entirely. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't place. Fear, regret, or guilt. The visitor smiled, cold and knowing. "You haven't changed much," he said, and that was when I started to wonder who I was really married to. "What is this about?" I asked, trying to sound calm, but my voice shook. I had no idea what was going on, but I felt an overwhelming urge to know. My husband shifted uncomfortably, glancing at me but not answering. The visitor stepped forward and spoke with an air of authority. "It's time you knew the truth," he said. The words hit me harder than I expected. The man revealed it in one brutal sentence. "Your husband used to be a hitman." My world tilted. I stared at my husband, waiting for him to deny it, but he said nothing. He looked at me with a mixture of regret and fear. "You don't understand," he muttered, but the damage was already done. I couldn't shake the words from my mind. Hitman, criminal, killer. I couldn't comprehend it. The man in front of me seemed sure of his words, and the way my husband avoided my gaze made it clear that he was hiding something dark. "You think this is some kind of joke?" I demanded, but the visitor was serious, his eyes cold and calculating. "You'll learn the truth soon enough," he said ominously, and my heart sank. I wanted to scream, to run far away from this nightmare, but I was frozen. The life I thought I knew was shattering before my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered to my husband, barely able to keep my voice steady. He remained silent for a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "I thought I could leave it behind. I wanted to protect you, but you didn't protect me, did you?" I shot back, the anger rising within me. How could he hide something so huge, so dangerous? "I had to leave that life behind," he said, but his words rang hollow. The visitor didn't seem convinced. "You can't run from the past," he said darkly. "It always catches up with you, sooner or later." The air between us grew tense, suffocating. I stood there, feeling like a stranger in my own home. My husband wasn't the man I thought he was. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. The visitor just smiled knowingly. "I'm someone who knows your husband's past all too well. He may have tried to forget, but we don't forget people like him." The words were like daggers. The silence that followed was deafening. My husband didn't look at me. His face was hidden in his hands, and the weight of his past hung over us. "What do you want with him?" I asked, desperate for answers. The visitor glanced at my husband one last time before replying, "We need him back. He's one of us. You can't hide from this life forever." My mind reeled with shock and disbelief. "Why would you want him back?" I asked, confused. The visitor didn't hesitate. "Because he owes us. He's not free from the past." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. My husband's life wasn't just a secret. It was a debt he could never escape. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I couldn't. I had to understand. I needed to know everything, no matter how painful. My husband's face was a mixture of shame and fear. He didn't speak. The man stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. He was good at his job. Too good. "We don't just let people like him go." I felt my stomach twist. My husband had been a hitman, someone who had killed for a living, and now his past was catching up with him. What had I married into? "How could you keep this from me?" I asked, my voice breaking. My husband didn't answer. The visitor chuckled darkly, clearly enjoying the scene. "You think he could just walk away from that life? They don't let people like him go." not without paying the price. I wanted to collapse. The truth was unbearable. The man I loved, the man I trusted, had been someone else entirely. My mind was racing. How could I ever look at him the same way again? I left all that behind, my husband finally said, his voice low and strained. I swear, I haven't killed anyone in years, but the visitor wasn't buying it. People like him never change. You think he'll be left alone? You're wrong. His words rang in my ears as I tried to process everything I had just learned. I didn't want you to know, my husband said quietly, his eyes filled with guilt. I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to be involved in this, but it was too late. I was already in it. The visitor was still there, and the reality of the situation was sinking in. I was married to a man with a past I couldn't even begin to understand. How could I protect him now? The visitor's words were cold and calculated. We don't forget people like him. We need him back for the job. My husband stood up straight, his jaw clenched. No, I'm not going back. I'm not part of that world anymore. But I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Could he really walk away from this life? Or was the past too strong to escape? You can't just leave it behind, the visitor said, his voice ice cold. They'll find you. They always do. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I was in this with him now. If they found him, they'd find me too. What happens if you refuse? I asked, barely able to breathe. The man's smile was ominous. You'll find out soon enough. They'll come for him. And for you. I never wanted this life for you, my husband whispered, his voice shaking. But I can't change what I did. I can't take it back. My heart ached for him, but the reality of the situation was clear. We couldn't just go back to the way things were. The visitor was still watching us, his cold eyes never leaving. It's too late for regrets, he said, and there's no escaping the past. The weight of everything was crushing. What do you want from us? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The visitor's answer was simple and terrifying. You'll help us, or you'll regret it. My husband's face tightened. I'm not doing this again. I'm done. But the visitor wasn't backing down. The tension was unbearable, and I was caught in the middle of a battle I didn't even understand. I wanted to run, to leave it all behind. But where would I go? My husband was in danger, and I was too. Please, just tell me what to do, I begged. The visitor didn't flinch. You'll help us, or you'll both suffer the consequences. My heart raced as I looked at my husband. He was trying to protect me, but could he? Would we ever be safe again? I can't, my husband said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I can't go back to that life. The visitor's face hardened. You don't have a choice. I could feel my world crumbling. This wasn't the life I imagined, not even close. I wanted to hold on to the man I thought I knew. But the more the visitor spoke, the more the truth twisted into something I wasn't sure I could live with. Why me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Why are you dragging me into this? The visitor didn't answer immediately. He only glanced at my husband, as if waiting for him to speak. You're part of this now, the man said coldly, whether you like it or not. My heart pounded in my chest. Was there any way out of this? Or was my life forever tied to a past I didn't know? I never wanted you to be involved, my husband whispered, his eyes filled with regret. But they'll never let me go. I should have told you the truth from the start. I felt the anger and confusion rise in me, threatening to overwhelm. You should have, I snapped. Now we're both trapped. The visitor remained silent, his gaze fixed on us, knowing that his control over us was tightening. You can't hide from the truth, the visitor said, his voice final. The past always catches up. My husband stood tall, trying to show strength, but his hands were trembling. I left that life behind. I'm not the same person anymore. But the visitor's eyes showed no mercy. You never really leave. You're still one of us, and we're not letting you go so easily. You think I want this? My husband's voice cracked. I've done things I can never undo. But I'm done. I don't want any part of it anymore. The visitor laughed darkly. People like you don't get to decide. You're part of this world forever. I could feel my heart breaking. He was stuck in this life, and I was stuck with him, whether I was ready or not. The visitor leaned in closer. You think you can just walk away from everything you've done? You're fooling yourself. I wanted to scream. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. But here he was, a man caught in the web of his past, and I was right there with him. I had to decide. Could I stand by him, or was it too much for me to bear? Tell me what you want, I demanded, my voice shaking with fear. What do you want from him? The visitor smiled coldly. We need him back. He owes us, and we don't forget people who owe us. I turned to my husband, desperate for answers. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want you to be a part of this. I didn't want to drag you into it. You think I'm going to leave you? I said, my words coming out sharp. I'm in this now, and I'm not walking away. But I can't believe you didn't trust me enough to tell me. My husband's eyes filled with guilt, and the visitor watched silently, waiting for my husband's response. I thought I could protect you, he said softly. But the truth was out, and there was no turning back. I'm not going back, my husband said firmly, as though trying to convince himself as much as me. I'm not that person anymore. I left that behind. The visitor's eyes narrowed. You can't just decide to walk away. They'll find you. And when they do, there's nowhere to hide. The weight of those words pressed down on us. The life I thought we could have was slipping away. I don't care about the past, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I care about us, about what we have now. But I need to know you're done with it, truly done. My husband's eyes softened. I'm done, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. But the visitor was still there, watching us like a hawk, waiting for any sign of weakness. The visitor's face remained unreadable. You think it's that simple? He asked, voice low. He can't just walk away from everything. You're both in this now. I turned to my husband, searching for reassurance. I won't let them hurt you, he said, but doubt lingered in his eyes. I could see the weight of his past pulling at him, a burden neither of us could escape. I just wanted a normal life, my husband whispered, his voice cracking. I thought I could leave that behind. The visitor chuckled darkly. You think you get to choose? You're already tangled in our world, whether you like it or not. The word stung. I didn't know if I could live with the constant fear of someone from his past coming for us. I didn't sign up for this, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and frustration. You told me nothing. You kept this from me. My husband's eyes filled with regret. I thought I could protect you from it. I didn't want you to get involved. The visitor crossed his arms, his gaze cold. Too late for that. You're already involved. My world seemed to close in on me, suffocating. Tell me what you want then, I demanded. What do you want from him? The visitor smirked. He has unfinished business. We need him back for one last job. The words hit like a punch. I didn't know what was worse, that my husband had once been part of this life, or that they still wanted him back. I'm done, my husband said firmly, but the doubt in his eyes said otherwise. Don't make promises you can't keep, the visitor warned, his tone cold and menacing. You're not walking away. We don't let people like him just disappear. I wanted to scream, to run, but where could we go? The world my husband had left behind was coming for him, and now it was coming for me too. There was no escaping the past, no matter how hard we tried. We don't forget people, the visitor added, his voice dripping with malice. He belongs to us. And you'll never be free of this life. My stomach churned. The man I loved, the man I had trusted, was tied to this world, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I felt trapped, not just by my husband's past, but by the realization that we were in this together. I won't let them take you back, I said, trying to find some strength. I won't let them destroy everything we've built. My husband looked at me, the fear in his eyes mixing with guilt. I don't want to go back, he said, but I don't know how to escape them. They always find you. The words were haunting, and I couldn't escape the fear that was settling in my chest. I can't lose you, I whispered, gripping my husband's hand. Not like this. We have to fight, to find a way out. He squeezed my hand but didn't answer. The visitor was still there, watching us with an air of certainty. You can't fight it. There's no running from what he is. The words hit me like a cold wave. My husband wasn't just a man. I had married someone with a past I could never outrun. What will they do to us? I asked, the fear in my voice evident. The visitor's smile was cruel. They'll take what they want when they want it. You think you have a choice? You don't. I felt my chest tighten. Was this our life now? A never-ending cycle of fear and regret? My husband's past was like a dark shadow, and no matter how hard we tried, it would never leave us. We need to make a decision, I said, my voice steady but my insides in turmoil. Do we face this, or do we run? My husband looked at me, torn. I can't run. It's not just about me anymore. It's about you, too. The visitor stepped forward, his eyes gleaming. It's too late for decisions. You'll come with us, or there will be consequences. The ultimatum hung in the air like a death sentence. I won't let them take you, I said, gripping my husband's arm. We'll find another way. His eyes softened, but doubt still lingered. I've been running my whole life. Maybe it's time to face the consequences. The visitor's smirk deepened. It's not about facing consequences. It's about survival. You can't run from this. My world was slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to hold on. We're not going anywhere, my husband said, finally finding his resolve. If they want me, they'll have to drag me back. The visitor's eyes narrowed, a hint of amusement in his gaze. That's the spirit. But you'll quickly learn you're not in control anymore. I felt a pang of fear in my chest. Could my husband really fight this? Or was he already defeated before he even began? I'm here for you, I said, my voice firm. We'll face whatever comes together. My husband's expression softened, but the fear still lingered. I can't protect you from this. Not this time. The visitor chuckled darkly. You think you're in control? There's no escaping what's coming. Not for him, not for you. The words stung like a slap, but I refused to back down. I looked at my husband, my heart aching. You're not alone in this, I whispered. I'm with you. Always. He nodded, though I could see the weight of his past bearing down on him. I just wanted you to have a normal life, he said, his voice breaking. But it's too late for that now. I couldn't let him give up. We had to fight, even if the odds were stacked against us. The visitor wasn't leaving. He lingered, watching us like a predator watching its prey. You'll soon see how powerless you really are, he said, his voice dripping with malice. I was losing hope, but I couldn't show it. My husband's past was catching up with us, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. Still, I refused to give in. We couldn't give up, not yet. They're going to hurt us, aren't they? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The visitor's eyes darkened. They don't care about what you want. They only care about what they need. And they'll get it, one way or another. The weight of his words was unbearable. My husband had dragged us both into this world, and now we had to face the consequences. I'll protect you, my husband said, his voice trembling with emotion. I won't let them hurt you. I wanted to believe him, but I knew the truth. His past was too powerful, too dangerous to escape. The visitor's smirk grew. You don't get to protect anyone. You'll see that soon enough. My heart pounded in my chest. Could we survive this? Or were we already doomed? We don't have a choice, I said, my voice resolute. We'll face this together, no matter what. My husband's face softened, but the fear never left his eyes. I don't want you to get hurt, he whispered. I never wanted this for you. I reached for his hand. I'm in this with you. We'll get through it. But even as I said the words, I wondered if I was fooling myself. The visitor's gaze was unwavering. You think you have control over your fate? You don't. My stomach churned at the cold certainty in his voice. I couldn't believe it. Was there really no way out? Were we truly trapped in this nightmare, with no escape? I wanted to fight, to stand strong, but the odds were against us. And the visitor was the least of our worries. In the end, it wasn't the past that would destroy us. It was the future. We had made our choices, and now we had to face the consequences. You're not free of me, the visitor said one last time, his voice a final warning. And as he left, I realized that no matter how hard we tried, my husband's past would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting to reclaim him. Thank you for listening to my story until now. If you like the video, please support it by subscribing and liking.